Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar is sending a tougher message.
When Pablo Escobar was killed on December 3, 1993, on top of his aunt's house in Medellin, Colombia, the world witnessed the end of an era.
This is the biggest single blow to international drug trafficking in a decade.
The man who was both revered and reviled, known as the King of Cocaine, left behind a legacy shrouded in mystery and controversy. As his body was laid to rest, over 25,000 people flooded the streets in a chaotic display of grief and disbelief. But what happened to the vast wealth he amassed? What happened to his family after his death?
I'm not proud of his violence, but I am proud of his love for me, to me and to my mother and sister.
What happened after Pablo Escobar died will shock you. So, join us. Pablo Escobar's background and ambition. Pablo Escobar, a name known for drug trafficking, terror, and extreme wealth, was born on December 1, 1949, into a poor family. He grew up in Rio Negro, Colombia, but was raised mainly in nearby Medellin, alongside his 6 siblings. His father worked as a small farmer, and his mother was a teacher. Despite their financial struggles, Escobar's parents prioritized their children's education. However, Escobar himself could not finish school and dropped out at the age of 17. Escobar's life story goes beyond just crime. It also mirrors Colombia's societal inequalities and the allure of power. Despite his humble beginnings, Escobar harbored ambitious dreams. He began his criminal activities early, engaging in small scams and stealing cars. These activities were his entry into the world of crime. He later attempted to return to school, but his involvement in street life made it difficult for him to adapt to the school environment, leading him to drop out again before graduation. It wasn't until he ventured into the growing cocaine trade that Escobar's criminal empire truly took off. In 1976, he founded the Medellin cartel, which established major smuggling routes in countries like Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and eventually the United States. The cartel's operations allowed cocaine to be distributed from Colombia throughout North and South America, bringing in immense profits. Escobar quickly became a big player in the drug trade, using both cruelty and cleverness. His cartel, the Medellin cartel, became the most powerful in the world's cocaine market by the mid-1980s. It was said that the cartel controlled over 80% of the cocaine sent to the U.S. This earned Escobar the nickname the King of Cocaine. His wealth was unbelievable. Forbes magazine named him one of the richest people in the world several times. He had fancy houses, private jets, and even a private zoo. His Hacienda Napola's estate was famous for its luxury, but Escobar's success came at a terrible cost. He was known for his plata o plomo, silver or lead philosophy, meaning people could either take his bribes or face bullets. He used violence to keep control of his cartel and stop the government from sending him to the U.S. to face charges. This led to a wave of narco-terrorism, with bombings, murders, and other violent acts. One of Escobar's boldest moves was bombing Avianca Flight 203 in 1989, killing all 107 people on board. He did this to try to kill a presidential candidate who wanted to extradite him to the U.S. His fight against the government reached a peak in 1985 when his men attacked the Colombian Supreme Court, killing half of the judges. In 1991, facing increasing pressure, Escobar surrendered to Colombian authorities. Escobar's imprisonment was a joke. He was kept in a fancy prison he had built called La Catedral. This place had everything, like a casino, spa, and nightclub. Even from prison, Escobar still ruled. He managed to escape in 1992, which triggered a huge manhunt across the country. Escobar portrayed himself as a modern-day Robin Hood, building homes and soccer fields for the poor in Medellin. This made it harder for authorities to catch him, as he had a lot of local people on his side. His marriage with Maria. In 1976, Pablo Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao, despite objections from her family. Escobar's reputation as a drug lord made the Henao family skeptical of him. The age gap between them was also a concern. Henao was 15, while Escobar was 26. Despite these challenges, Henao was determined to marry him, so they eloped. Escobar and Henao had known each other since she was much younger, still in high school. They lived near each other, and Henao saw Escobar as an influential figure in their community, almost like a leader. People would often seek his help. Despite her parents' disapproval, especially from her mother, Henao and Escobar continued their relationship, but they had to keep it very private and guarded. Henao's mother had a strong sense that something was not right about Escobar. Their courtship, though secretive, was filled with romance. Henao was drawn to Escobar's charisma and allure. She described him as her first love, and their first kiss happened when she was just 13 years old. Henao had romanticized their relationship, as many young girls do, with dreams and illusions of a perfect romance. However, as she matured, she realized that their relationship was far from perfect. They became intimate when she was 14, an experience she later felt was forced and involuntary. Coming from a traditional Catholic family, Henao lacked understanding about intimacy and felt completely vulnerable in her relationship with Escobar. Their story highlights the complexities of relationships, societal expectations, and personal experiences that shape individuals' lives. Despite the challenges and controversies surrounding their union, their story is a reminder of the human side of individuals often portrayed in a negative light. Henao faced a difficult situation when she found out she was pregnant. She didn't realize she was being pressured by Escobar to have an abortion. Despite the passage of time, Henao kept this event a secret, following her late husband's wishes. It seemed as though she had been living under Escobar's influence since the day they met. Despite everything, Henao still felt a deep love for Escobar. Maybe she was too young to understand, but there was no doubt she loved him and was preparing to marry him. It was like living in a dream, with Escobar as her Prince Charming. When faced with disapproval from Henao's parents, the couple ran away, seeking approval from her grandmother, similar to a rebellious Romeo and Juliet. They were married by the end of their journey. It's important to note that Henao had no idea about her husband's involvement in the drug smuggling industry. She essentially married someone she didn't know. Her dream had come true, and she was finally married to her Prince Charming. However, her marriage was not what she had hoped for. Escobar was not straightforward with her about his business, and she had to learn to accept an inferior role in their relationship. As time passed, Henao's illusions about her marriage faded. She had no control over her marriage, a common practice in the traditional household where she was raised. Despite this, she did not have to like it. Escobar lived a double life, appearing as a regular family man during the week, but disappearing on weekends to conduct his criminal activities. Henao had their first child before finishing school, a situation that is hard to imagine. She became a mother before fully experiencing womanhood, but she was surrounded by material comforts and a luxurious lifestyle provided by Escobar. Escobar's last hours. It was December 2nd, 1993, and everyone in Colombia seemed to be searching for Pablo Escobar. Well, not quite everyone, but it sure felt like it. Rival cartels, a team of deadly mercenaries known as Los Pepes, and even Escobar's own family were all hunting him down in the gritty streets of Medellin. Now hold up a second. You're probably scratching your head. Let's break it down. What was described was the intense moments leading up to Escobar's final hour, maybe even just the last 30 minutes before he met his end. Escobar had gone into hiding after the Colombian government announced their plan to transfer him to a regular prison. But Escobar, being the stubborn and prideful man he was, refused to go quietly. So the Colombian government, along with a group of paramilitary individuals who weren't afraid to bend the rules a bit, launched a massive manhunt. Now back to the story. It was Escobar's birthday, but instead of his usual celebration with family, he found himself in a tight spot. He desperately needed to talk to his family, so he took a risk and called his son. Little did he know the Colombian government was listening in and quickly pinpointed his location. They wasted no time. Armed military forces stormed the hideout with one goal: to capture Escobar. He realized he had made a grave mistake. Trying to escape through the roof, he found himself trapped as soldiers swarmed the building. And that, my friends, is how Pablo Escobar's life came to a dramatic end on a rooftop, cornered like a rat, alongside his most trusted bodyguard, El Limon. Public reaction to the death of the drug lord. Today, drug lord Pablo Escobar was killed, 16 months after he escaped from prison. The news caused turmoil across the country, awakening people from every corner. News of his death spread rapidly, with radio channels and news outlets announcing that Escobar had been shot dead on Colombian soil. The reaction to Escobar's death was a mix of sadness and admiration. Many felt a palpable sense of loss and suffering. With Escobar gone, the game was changing for drug dealers, and everyone was vying to take control. The government took the Pablo family into custody, and suddenly, there was a shift in the streets. People began to flock to the scene of Escobar's death, not just curious onlookers, but followers who came to honor their Robin Hood. To the government, he was a ruthless cocaine baron, but to the people of Medellin, he was a hero. Escobar will be remembered for his generosity, as he gave millions to the poor in Colombia. Pablo Escobar's funeral. Pablo Escobar's funeral was a monumental event in Colombia's history, drawing over 25,000 mourners to the funeral home and burial site. Some were deeply saddened by the loss of their Robin Hood, while others felt relieved that Escobar's criminal activities were finally over. Mourners wore T-shirts adorned with pictures of Escobar and carried signs declaring their loyalty, such as "Pablo, you will always be with us," and "Long live Pablo Escobar." The crowd was so massive that Escobar's family couldn't even open the car doors to reach the funeral. They were forced to turn around and miss the ceremony. The family mourned in silence and fear, knowing the intense scrutiny they faced from the media. The death of Pablo Escobar had a profound impact on his family and friends, who not only grieved his loss, but also felt the weight of the media attention surrounding his death. The funeral became a symbol of both mourning and closure for many, marking the end of an era dominated by Escobar's reign of terror and criminal empire. After Pablo Escobar died, his body was taken to a local morgue in Medellin, Colombia. Escobar's family paid their respects to the fallen drug lord, but had to leave quickly as reporters and enemies surrounded the funeral. The funeral took place at the Jardins Montesacro Cemetery in Medellin, 2 days after his death. Thousands of people mourned that day, saying their final goodbyes. Despite authorities trying to maintain order, they couldn't prevent some mourners from causing trouble. The burial happened hastily, with the priest unable to complete his prayers due to the crowd's push and pressure. Escobar's family faced numerous challenges, including fear from enemies, government pressure, and accusations from reporters. The day of the funeral was extremely difficult for them. Escobar's son expressed the family's struggle, saying, "We are just going through a lot and trying to make our lives normal for my mother, my sister Manuela, and me." The past 24 hours had been the most intense of their lives. The day of Escobar's funeral was a turning point for many. Some lost a family member, others lost a hero, while for some, it was the end of a reign of terror. Pablo Escobar's family, post-funeral. When Pablo Escobar died, his wife Maria Henao and their children, Manuela and Juan Pablo, were already being closely watched by the DEA. This meant Maria couldn't take over as the new leader of the Medellin cartel, even if she had wanted to. However, Maria was never interested in power. She married Pablo when she was young, in a situation that might sound strange. Throughout her life, she simply aimed to be a good wife and mother, staying away from trouble. After Pablo's death, Maria wanted nothing to do with the drug empire. With 2 young children, especially Manuela, who was only 9 at the time, their safety was paramount. The family couldn't stay at Pablo's lavish ranch anymore. Los Pepes and rival cartels were targeting anyone associated with Pablo, putting their lives in danger. Their only option was to flee the country, but even that was complicated. Airlines refused to sell them plane tickets due to their connection to Escobar. They remained in Colombia for a year, hoping for help from organizations like the Vatican and the United Nations, but no one stepped forward. Juan Pablo and his family faced death threats daily, forcing them to hide in a hotel room and hire bodyguards for protection. However, they soon ran out of money and couldn't afford the hotel or the bodyguards anymore. Their situation was dire, with danger lurking around every corner. Despite their attempts to seek help and find safety, Juan Pablo and his family were trapped in a dangerous and uncertain situation, with their lives hanging in the balance. Pablo's family finally flew abroad. Maria Henao took her two children, Manuela and Juan Pablo, and traveled across the world to seek asylum in Mozambique, Africa. However, the Mozambican government refused them entry, as did Brazil and Germany. No one wanted to have anything to do with the Escobar family. After some effort, she managed to gain entry into Argentina as a tourist. When Maria and the children arrived in Argentina, they were unknown, which was a relief. However, Maria's name was plastered all over the news as a member of the Medellin cartel, and more notably, as Pablo Escobar's wife. Knowing the danger they faced due to Escobar's violent past, Maria made a tough decision. She changed her name from Maria Victoria Henao to Maria Isabel Santos Caballero. This allowed her and her family to live in peace for the next few years, until the Argentine government eventually tracked them down in 1999. The journey to safety was filled with challenges and dangers at every turn. Maria's determination to protect her children led her to make difficult decisions, including changing her identity. Yet even with their new names, the shadow of Escobar's legacy loomed over them, threatening their safety and peace of mind. In 2000, Maria and her son Juan Pablo were arrested on money laundering charges. Maria had endured years of suffering, first from Pablo Escobar's infidelity and narcissism during their 17-year marriage, and then as she carried the burden of his legacy after his death. The Argentine government imprisoned Maria for a few months, but they couldn't find any evidence linking her or Juan to drug trafficking, so they were released. Maria lived in hiding with her family in Argentina for the next 2 decades before she decided to tell her story in a book titled Mrs. Escobar, My Life with Pablo. Juan, now known as Sebastian after changing his name, also wrote a book. His book portrayed a softer, kinder side of Pablo Escobar. Despite this, many Colombians feared that Sebastian might seek revenge for his father's death, viewing him as a potential protagonist in a real-life action movie sequel. However, Sebastian distanced himself from his father's actions and even criticized the Netflix series Narcos for glorifying Escobar instead of condemning his atrocities. This shows that Sebastian is not the kind of person seeking revenge for his father's death. The question remains, why would anyone seek revenge for Pablo Escobar? Shockingly, Pablo Escobar was responsible for the deaths of over 4,000 Colombians. One of his most heinous acts was the killing of over 14 teenage girls after one of them reported his cartel's exploitation of virgin young girls to the police. This act is unimaginable and shows the extreme lengths to which Escobar would go to protect his criminal empire. Sebastian, Pablo's son, revealed in an interview that he had narrowly escaped more than 9 kidnapping attempts in Argentina. These attempts occurred after Forbes published an article stating that Pablo Escobar had left behind more than $3 billion. However, what these kidnappers didn't realize was that all that money was left behind in Colombia after Pablo died. The interview with Sebastian sheds light on the dangers he faced due to his father's criminal legacy. It also highlights the misconceptions surrounding Pablo Escobar's wealth and the reality of Sebastian's life after his father's death. The brutal reality, the massacre of the virgins. The story of Pablo Escobar's reign is rife with bloodshed and terror, but nothing perhaps better captures its brutality than the massacre of the virgins. A sequence of terrifying events that took place in Medellin and left many shaken. The truth was even more horrific. These girls, who had been tricked into joining Escobar's orbit on pretenses, were trapped in a nightmare from which there was no way out. The massacre of the virgins was a string of murders that happened gradually, rather than in one go. Investigations revealed a chilling pattern in these murders. Many victims were shot multiple times, their bodies marked with crosses formed by bullet wounds, a sort of ritualistic element suggesting a deeper, more sinister motive behind these killings beyond just silencing those who might betray Escobar. This tragedy's extent was revealed in a most gruesome manner. Bodies of young women barely in their teens were found scattered across the northern regions of Colombia. The scenes were horrifying. The victims bore signs of torture, and their deaths were vicious and calculated. Many of the victims were left in public. The massacre left deep scars on the communities from which these girls were taken. Families were left to mourn in a state of helplessness and fear. Their losses were compounded by the stigma and silence that often surrounded the victims of Escobar's violence. The societal impact was profound, instilling a pervasive sense of dread and distrust. The victims were the same young, innocent girls who had once been seduced by promises of a better life. Their backgrounds varied, but they shared common threads of vulnerability and exploitation. These were not just faceless faces. They were daughters, sisters, and friends, each with a tragically short story. The Colombian government and police, already struggling against the overwhelming power of the Medellin cartel, found themselves grappling with an unprecedented horror when these men, desensitized to violence and loyal to Escobar's orders, played a direct role in the abduction, torture, and murder of the girls. Their complicity paints a grim picture of the depths of human depravity under the influence of power and fear. The investigation into these murders was fraught with challenges from the fear of retaliation to the corruption that permeated the system. Despite these challenges, some brave souls within the police force persisted, determined to bring justice to the victims. The massacre of the virgins was not an isolated incident. Rather, it was a reflection of larger problems that Colombian society was facing at the time. It brought to light the widespread influence of drug culture, the stark social injustices that existed, and the vulnerability of the marginalized. This event prompted a national examination of the social norms that permitted such atrocities to happen, even decades later. The massacre of the virgins is still remembered as a tragic chapter in Colombian history, serving as a chilling reminder of the human cost of the drug trade and the disastrous consequences of one man's ambition. The tales of these young ladies who were engulfed in Escobar's empire still ring true as a dark testament to the cruelty of unbridled power and the frailty of innocence. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. What happened after Pablo Escobar died will shock you. In the aftermath of Pablo Escobar's demise, the once mighty empire he built upon blood and cocaine crumbled like a house of cards. The streets of Medellin, once ruled by fear under the shadow of the notorious drug lord, found themselves caught in a power vacuum. As news of Escobar's death spread like wildfire, rival cartels and factions within his own organization saw an opportunity to seize control. Among them was Miguel El Diablo Cortez, a ruthless enforcer who had long coveted Escobar's throne. With a cunning mind and a heart as cold as ice, El Diablo wasted no time in making his move. But as El Diablo plotted his ascent to power, he faced opposition from unexpected quarters. Maria, a former lover of Escobar and a survivor of his brutality, emerged from the shadows with a burning desire for vengeance. With her charisma and determination, she rallied a group of disillusioned former members of Escobar's cartel to her cause. The streets ran red with blood as rival factions clashed in a struggle for supremacy, leaving no one unscathed. As Medellin teetered on the brink of collapse, one thing became clear. The legacy of Pablo Escobar would continue to cast a long shadow over the city, long after his death. And in the end, it would be the people of Medellin, the survivors, the dreamers, and the fighters who would determine the fate of their home. Pablo Escobar's properties. After Pablo Escobar's family fled the country, his lavish properties, including his $10 billion mansion known as La Catedral and other estates, were left to decay in Medellin. Despite his immense wealth, which he couldn't deposit in banks, Escobar resorted to unconventional methods to hide his money. He stashed millions inside furniture, buried cash underground, and hid it in various obscure locations. During his prime, Escobar controlled 80% of the cocaine trade in America. He once burned $2 million to keep his daughter warm when they ran out of firewood. The destruction didn't stop there. Rival cartels detonated explosives at Escobar's former home, the Monaco building, reducing it to rubble. The Colombian government later seized the deserted 6-story building and transformed it into a tourist attraction, offering visitors a glimpse into Escobar's life. However, for the community, it served as a haunting reminder of the lives lost due to Escobar's actions. Escobar's story is one of extremes: immense wealth, extravagant lifestyles, and ruthless violence. His downfall left a lasting impact on Colombia, with his properties standing as stark symbols of his reign of terror. Despite his demise, Escobar's legacy continues to fascinate and horrify people worldwide. In 2018, the government made a bold decision to demolish Pablo Escobar's former residence and transform the land into a solemn memorial honoring the victims of his reign of terror. Another of Escobar's opulent properties, his retreat in Guatapé named La Manuela after his daughter, suffered a similar fate. This haven, where Escobar sought solace from his criminal endeavors, met destruction even before his demise. A rival cartel, in an audacious act, detonated over 200 kilos of TNT explosives, severely damaging the structure while Escobar was in hiding. Over time, nature reclaimed the land, while scavengers picked apart the remnants in search of Escobar's hidden treasures. Although their success remains unknown, it's widely acknowledged that Escobar's most significant loss after his death was La Cathedral. This extravagant prison, equipped with a casino, spa, and football field, stood as a testament to Escobar's excesses. After Escobar's demise, La Cathedral became a hotspot for scavengers, both locals and outsiders, hoping to unearth hidden riches. Millions of dollars, both inside and outside the building, were reportedly buried or stashed away. However, once the frenzy subsided, La Cathedral was left abandoned. Eventually, a group of Benedictine monks assumed stewardship of the site, transforming it into a place of worship and remembrance. They repurposed the once opulent prison into a somber memorial, honoring the countless lives affected by Escobar's atrocities. The transformation of Escobar's former properties reflects a collective effort to reckon with the legacy of violence and destruction he left behind. It serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of his criminal empire and the resilience of those who survived his tyranny. The dark legacy and reflections on Escobar's reign. Pablo Escobar's shadow looms large over Colombia, especially the heartbreaking tale of the 49 innocent virgins he mercilessly murdered. This grim chapter in Colombian history underscores the profound impact of Escobar's rule on society, culture, and politics. His reign of terror laid bare the harsh realities of inequality and exploitation in Colombian society, prompting a national reckoning with issues like poverty, corruption, and justice. The narrative of Escobar's life and crimes, including the tragic fate of his young victims, has deeply penetrated Colombian culture. It has inspired artistic expressions in various forms, from literature to cinema, sparking debates about whether it glorifies narco-culture or serves as a means to confront and comprehend this dark era. Escobar's actions and the government's response reshaped Colombia's political landscape. The fight against his criminal network prompted reforms in law enforcement and the judicial system. It also shifted political perspectives on crime, drug trafficking, and international cooperation. The economic ramifications of Escobar's drug empire extended far beyond criminal enterprises. While his operations generated immense wealth, they also distorted the economy. Illicit drug money infiltrated legitimate businesses and financial systems, leaving a lasting imprint on Colombia's economic structure. Escobar's legacy serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the consequences of criminal enterprise on society. It underscores the importance of addressing systemic issues like inequality and corruption to prevent the rise of similar criminal networks in the future. The aftermath of Pablo Escobar's rule brought about efforts to clean up the economy from drug money and to revive sectors that had suffered due to the drug trade. Internationally, Escobar's reign and the suffering of his victims shaped Colombia's reputation as a hub for drug trafficking and violence. This perception had long-lasting effects on the country's relationships with other nations, trade, and tourism. Colombia has worked tirelessly to overcome this stigma, highlighting its diverse culture, rich history, and economic potential. Escobar's era highlighted the difficulties of fighting drug trafficking, leading to ongoing efforts in Colombia to combat drug cartels. These efforts have evolved to address not only the supply chain, but also the social and economic factors that drive the drug trade. The psychological impact on Colombians has been profound, with many experiencing fear, loss, and uncertainty during Escobar's rule. The stories of his victims, particularly the young girls, serve as a stark reminder of the human toll of the drug war. In response to the horrors of Escobar's regime, Colombia has implemented significant legal and ethical reforms. These include tougher measures against corruption, improved witness protection programs, and initiatives to assist victims of drug-related violence. Additionally, Escobar's legacy has sparked broader discussions about healing and reconciliation in Colombia. Efforts to recognize and honor the victims, including the young girls, have been integral to this process. Memorials, public discussions, and support for survivors and their families all contribute to Colombia's journey toward confronting its past and moving forward. These initiatives aim to acknowledge the suffering caused by Escobar's reign and to ensure that the victims are not forgotten. By addressing the legacy of Escobar and the impact of the drug war, Colombia strives to build a more just and compassionate society for the future. The good deeds of Pablo Escobar. Before his death, Pablo Escobar constructed schools, hospitals, shelters, and other buildings for the people of Medellin. Despite this, he brutally killed anyone who opposed him, creating a paradoxical image of himself. Some saw him as a hero for his charitable acts, while others viewed him as a devil due to his violent and criminal actions. This contradiction in his character, being both a benefactor and a ruthless criminal, adds complexity to his legacy and how he is remembered in history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.